I saw something wearing a red cap in the woods. I wish I hadn't. The silence was the first thing that got to me. City life is a constant hum, a white noise blanket that smothers the quiet. Here, in this cabin, nestled against the seemingly endless Appalachian forest, the quiet was a living thing. It pressed against my eardrums, a void that amplified every creak of the aging wood, every rustle of leaves, every beat of my own frantic heart. Sarah would have loved it here. She always wanted a place where we could escape, where the stars weren't choked by light pollution and the air tasted clean. But Sarah wasn't here. A drunk driver, a blind curve, and now she was just a memory, a ghost that haunted my waking hours and invaded my dreams. I'd bought the cabin cheap, a foreclosure on the edge of Hollow Creek. The realtor hadn't mentioned the string of disappearances that had plagued the area over the years. Small-town secrets, I figured. Every place has them. The first few weeks were restorative, in a way. I spent my days hiking, trying to lose myself in the dense woods. The physical exertion helped, numbing the pain, at least temporarily. I learned the rhythm of the forest, the chattering of squirrels, the soaring calls of hawks, the soft padding of deer through the undergrowth. Then came the red. It was just a flash, a fleeting glimpse of color in the periphery. I was hiking along a game trail, the afternoon sun dappling through the canopy, when I saw it. A bright, almost unnatural red, bobbing between the trees. I stopped, squinting, trying to focus, but it was gone. Must have been a cardinal, I muttered to myself, but the thought felt hollow. It hadn't looked like a bird. It was too deliberate. The next day, it happened again. This time, I was chopping wood behind the cabin. I caught the flash of red out of the corner of my eye, closer this time, near the edge of the tree line. I dropped the axe and walked towards it, my heart pounding. Branches snapped underfoot. The air grew cold, a sudden, unnatural chill. I reached the edge of the trees and peered into the woods. Nothing. Just the endless green, the shadows deepening as the sun began to set. I felt a prickle of unease on the back of my neck, the sensation of being watched. Over the next few days, the red sightings intensified. They were always brief, fleeting, but undeniably there. It was always the same shade of red, a vibrant, almost blood-like hue. And it always seemed to be, moving, watching. I started sleeping poorly. Nightmares plagued me. Sarah's smiling face dissolving into a twisted mask, the flash of red growing closer and closer, a figure emerging from the darkness. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the silence of the cabin amplifying my fear. One afternoon, I decided to drive into Hollow Creek. I needed supplies, but more than that, I needed to talk to someone, to hear a human voice that wasn't my own. The village was quaint. A handful of buildings clustered around a general store and a post office. The people I saw were quiet, reserved, their eyes lingering on me a little too long. I bought my supplies and was heading back to my truck when I saw him. An old man sitting on a bench outside the general store, whittling a piece of wood. He was hunched over, his face wrinkled and weathered like old leather. His eyes, though, were sharp, intelligent. "Afternoon," I said, trying to sound casual. He looked up, his gaze piercing. "New fella, ain't ya?" "Yeah, I bought the old Peterson place." He nodded slowly. "That place, it's seen things." "So I hear." I chuckled nervously. "Just local legends, I guess." He stopped whittling and looked at me intently. "These woods, they ain't like other woods. They got a memory. And some things, they don't forget." "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then leaned closer. "You seen anything unusual out there?" I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Just the usual. Deer, squirrels. He studied my face, his eyes unwavering. "And red? You seen any red?" I swallowed hard. "Why do you ask?" He sighed, a long, weary sound. "There's stories, old stories, about a being in these woods. Wears a red cap. Best not to look at it. Best not to acknowledge it at all." "A red cap?" I scoffed. "Come on, that's just a fairy tale. Fairy tales are just warnings told in pretty words," he said, his voice low and serious. "This ain't a fairy tale, son. This is Hollow Creek." He spat on the ground and went back to whittling, dismissing me. I drove back to the cabin, Old Man Henlock's words echoing in my head. I tried to dismiss them as the ramblings of a senile old man, but his intensity had shaken me. That night, the nightmares were worse than ever. The next morning, I found something new. Red thread, tied to the trees around my cabin, arranged in strange, unsettling patterns. Squares, circles, spirals. They were everywhere. I felt a surge of panic. This wasn't just my imagination. Something was happening, something real. I called Sheriff Brody. He arrived an hour later, a middle-aged man with a weary face and a skeptical demeanor. "Mr. Walker," he said, his voice patient, "you said someone's been tampering with your property?" "Yes, red thread, Sheriff, tied to the trees. It's not normal." He followed me around the property, examining the thread. He took pictures, made notes, but his expression remained unconvinced. "Looks like some kids playing around, Mr. Walker. Maybe a harmless prank." "It's not a prank, Sheriff. I've seen things. Red things. In the woods." He sighed. "Mr. Walker, I understand you've been through a lot lately. Maybe you're just stressed. Seeing things that aren't there." "I'm not crazy," I shouted, my voice cracking. He put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm not saying you are, but maybe you should consider talking to someone. A therapist, perhaps." He left, promising to keep an eye on things, but I knew he didn't believe me. I was alone. That night, I set up security cameras around the cabin. I was determined to catch whatever was out there, to prove that I wasn't imagining things. The next day, I checked the footage. Nothing. The cameras had malfunctioned, displaying static and distorted images. All of them. My paranoia ratcheted up another notch. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, a psychological game designed to drive me insane. I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront whatever was out there. I grabbed my hunting knife, a flashlight, and a backpack filled with supplies, and ventured into the woods. I walked for hours, deeper than I had ever gone before. The trees grew taller, the undergrowth thicker. The air was heavy, still. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. I kept seeing flashes of red in the distance, leading me on, drawing me further into the heart of the forest. Finally, I came to a clearing. It was a small, secluded space, hidden from the sun by the dense canopy. And in the center of the clearing, there was an altar. It was a crude structure, made of piled stones, covered in animal bones and rotting vegetation. And draped across the altar, there was a piece of red fabric, the same shade of red I had been seeing in the woods. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't my imagination. This was something else. As I stood there, staring at the altar, I heard a sound. A low, guttural growl coming from the trees. I spun around, my heart pounding. I raised my knife, my hand shaking. And then I saw it. It was just a glimpse, a fleeting shadow between the trees. But it was enough. A figure. Tall, gaunt, its features obscured by the darkness. And on its head, a bright red cap. I froze, paralyzed by fear. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. Then, it spoke. Its voice was like the rustling of leaves, the creaking of branches, the whisper of the wind. But it was also something more, something ancient, something malevolent. "You shouldn't have come here," it said. I didn't wait to hear more. I turned and ran, crashing through the undergrowth, the figure's voice echoing in my ears. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs ached, until I thought I would collapse. I didn't dare look back. I finally stumbled back to my cabin, exhausted and terrified. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and barricaded it with furniture. I huddled in the corner, my knife clutched in my hand, waiting for it to come. It didn't come. Not that night. But I knew it was out there, watching, waiting. The next morning, I woke up to find the cabin ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled open, the contents scattered across the floor. And on the wall, scrawled in red paint, was a single word. Soon. I knew I couldn't stay there. I had to get out. I had to escape the woods. I packed my bags, threw them in my truck, and started driving. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away from Hollow Creek. But the woods wouldn't let me go. Every road I took seemed to lead me back to the same place. Familiar landmarks appeared and disappeared, the landscape shifting and changing around me. I was trapped in a loop, unable to escape the clutches of the forest. I drove for days, my mind unraveling, my grip on reality slipping. I saw the figure in the red cap everywhere, in the trees, in the shadows, in the reflection of my rearview mirror. I started talking to myself, rambling incoherently about Sarah, about the red cap, about the woods. Finally, I broke down. I pulled over to the side of the road, buried my face in my hands, and wept. And then I heard it. The rustling of leaves, the creaking of branches, the whisper of the wind, the figure's voice. "You can't escape," it said. "You belong here. With me." I looked up. The figure was standing in the road, blocking my path. It was closer than ever before. I could see its face now, or at least what passed for a face. It was gaunt, skeletal, with empty sockets where its eyes should have been, and on its head the bright red cap. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. The figure smiled, a slow, cruel smile. "I am the woods," it said, "and you are mine." It reached out a long, bony hand and touched my forehead. And then everything went black. I woke up in my cabin. The sun was streaming through the windows. The birds were singing. Everything seemed normal. I got up, walked to the mirror, and looked at my reflection. It wasn't me. It was my face, but it was also something else. Something ancient. Something malevolent. And on my head, I saw it. The bright red cap.